Further showers tonight in the west and north, mainly dry elsewhere. Cold with lowest temperatures of 0 to -3 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Well, they're ticking along at Selhurst Park. It's Crystal Palace 0, Brighton 1. That's after 65 minutes on the clock there. Neil Mapai with the goal for Brighton. That was on the 45th minute. So Brighton thus far in the lead at Crystal Palace. Coming up on the Football Show this evening, we'll hear from Brian Kerr. He was at Old Trafford yesterday with Stephen Doyle. There was much to discuss there. And Gary Breen as well. He was at the Emirates with Nathan yesterday. So Gary Breen will be talking about Arsenal and the job that Mikel Arteta has on his hands. And Brian Kerr, I'm sure, touching on where Everton are as Carlo Ancelotti, it seems, although it's unconfirmed, was on Merseyside today for discussion. So it certainly seems like Arteta and Ancelotti appointments are imminent. In the meantime, Nathan Murphy was alongside Gary Breen at the Emirates yesterday, so he popped in earlier on today for a little chat about what happened yesterday in North London. Nathan Murphy, freshly back from the Emirates last night. Did you enjoy your trip?
Thoroughly enjoyed every trip to the Emirates. Okay. Football wasn't great from Arsenal's point of view. Manchester City, I thought, were good without having to be great. Mm-hmm. It's just a sort of forgettable enough game. I've covered a lot of Arsenal, Manchester City in the last couple of seasons, and it's only when you're doing your bit of research and you're going, oh, I was at that. Yeah. Because Arsenal don't offer anything. No fight, no backbone, no real talent, no real atmosphere at the stadium. It's a very, very strange place to go at the moment.
Very quiet. Meanwhile, Mesut Ozil, who is routinely described as not having the stomach for a fight, any kind of halfway challenge, he does not want to know about it, and he walked very slowly off the pitch. I mean, even in just the most self-serving way, given what Xhaka did, I think he would just trot off the pitch at the moment so as not to create a storm. But Ozil, in fairness to him, has landed himself at the centre of something very high profile. On Friday, he tweeted a picture criticising the Chinese government for their treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China. He calls Uyghurs warriors who resist persecution. China's crackdown and silence of Muslims has been much discussed. The United Nations and various human rights groups estimate that between 1 million and 2 million people, mostly Uyghur Muslims, have been detained in dreadful conditions as part of what Beijing calls an anti-terrorism campaign. So Beijing argue that they are educating potential terrorists, whereas human rights groups say what's going on is abhorrent. So Ozil talked about how they burn their Qurans, they shut down their mosques, they ban their schools, they kill their holy men. The men are forced into camps, their families are forced to live with Chinese men, the women are forced to marry Chinese men, but Muslims are silent. They won't make a noise. They have abandoned them. Don't they know that giving consent for persecution is persecution itself? And this has kicked off a major reaction in China. A couple of months ago, the Houston Rockets general manager, Daryl Morey, tweeted in support of the protesters in Hong Kong, and all hell kicked off for the NBA. China, huge sponsor. Morey pretty quickly had to issue a grovelling apology. You can imagine the pressure he came under. And what's happened here is Ozil has put out this statement. The CCTV state television made the decision on Sunday to remove Arsenal's Premier League game. That's a big decision, and Arsenal could not rush quickly enough to distance themselves from any political comment. The content he expressed is entirely Ozil's personal opinion. The official account of Arsenal said on China's Twitter-like Weibo platform, so they didn't tweet it over here if you're looking for it. As a football club, they say Arsenal always adheres to the principle of not being involved in politics, although Miguel Delaney pointed out that Hector Bellerin said F Boris in a tweet, and there's been no blowback. So where this leaves Ozil, we don't quite know. They're still selling jerseys, Arsenal jerseys, it was reported today over in China, but CCTV are pretty important to the Premier League. The deal with China is worth the guts of $700 million, I was reading today, so it's the largest overseas deal. That is $700 million of the $4.5 billion over 3 years, which goes on overseas deals. And China will not take this line down. So Ozil, whose position at the club always feels slightly precarious anyway, is now...
He's on such a high wage,
serious
they
trouble.
can't get rid of him.
Yeah. So I don't know, it's an interesting one for Arsenal, because on the face of it, given what the United Nations have said and other human rights groups, reputable human rights groups are saying, what he's alleging has substance. He is talking as well about other Muslims being silent. I think every single Premier League club, bar one, has Muslims playing for it currently. I was just checking there. So who knows if other high-profile Muslim footballers started coming out and attacking China, what CCTV would do. You can't stop 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players if they all start coming out. I mean, clubs can't do much about it. I suppose behind the scenes they might say, can you just keep this quiet?
I suspect there's a lot of scrambling going on behind the scenes. Reading this over the last couple of days, it feels like it's a massive story for the Premier League. The Premier League have been offering Arsenal support behind the scenes because suddenly a light has been shone upon China, and the amount of money that which I'd imagine the Premier League are expecting their overseas rights deals to just climb and climb and climb, that if the Chinese state broadcaster suddenly decide, well, you know what, we're going to clamp down on what you may look at as a freedom of expression, but if you talk about our country, we're going to pull the plug instantly. It puts the Premier League and the clubs in a difficult position. Now, they're going to have to suck it up because they've taken these deals, they've taken the money, they know who they're dealing with. Ozil, obviously, you'd have to assume was aware of what the potential was for this. It feels as though Arsenal are maybe just hoping it all just
completely goes away.
Down and
the Premier League may have to stand up to China here and say, look, we can't control what our players are saying. They're perfectly entitled to tweet this kind of stuff. They are going to tweet this stuff. I suspect others may follow Ozil now because this will garner huge attention, and he's calling out other Muslims, high-profile Muslims, to say something about the situation. What can the Premier League do if various players take a stand over this and China says, you need to shut them up, otherwise we're pulling all the games? Like, from a Chinese perspective, they were able to pull the Arsenal City game. They can't pull every game. Or if they do, I mean, self-defeating as well in many respects.
Well, they can do. What is it, $700 million? It's the largest overseas deal. 4.5 million, the total overseas. Like the 4.5 billion, and the Premier League rights on this side of the world have very much stagnated. In fact, I think it was slightly down last time around. But the overseas deal is just rising and rising. Whether they could have preempted this, I don't know. Do players receive advice? I don't think Mesut Ozil, if this is how he feels, he should be entitled to go and say it. But Miguel Delaney obviously points out there are contradictions there when it comes to Mesut Ozil.
He's good friends with Erdogan. So, Miguel Delaney made the point, you can't pick and choose morality, something that has, of course, been put to Pep Guardiola before regarding his speaking out against Spain and his refusal to do so with Abu Dhabi. So there's no doubt, like, Ozil is not a perfect person, and he's open to that criticism of his friendship with Erdogan in Turkey. But that notwithstanding, he can make a very valid point about the situation in China. It's just amazing that China reacts so... like, they've created... Mesut Ozil's tweet would have come and gone, and a lot of us would have missed it. And now it's a huge story, and it's a huge issue for the Premier League. But this is like zero tolerance on China's part. And I think...
Who could have predicted that they would have clamped down on free speech?
I think they're buoyed by the way the NBA folded so quickly. I would think.
So they well, also, because the $700 million is coming from state TV, they probably rightly feel that that comes with a certain amount of power.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry said that Ozil has been deceived by fake news. It's fake news. It's fake news. It's fake news. It's fake news. So this is one to watch. I don't know where this is going to go. If Ozil keeps tweeting, if others start tweeting, what the Premier League response is going to be is the question. Arsenal's response is going to be, we're going to put our hands over our eyes right now and pray this goes away really quickly.
Say nothing.
Mesut, if you could, just keep it stum, that'd be great. But how do we say that to Mesut Ozil without him tweeting that? So that's one to watch over the next while. I think the Premier League might have to take the pain on this one. They can't set precedents whereby they bow down to China.
Well, what can they do? They can't suspend Mesut Ozil for this.
No, the issue is if China communicate to the Premier League, we're pulling the deal. In which case the Premier League have to say, we're very sorry about that, but we can't silence 20 by 20, 400 odd players. So that's Ozil. Not shirking it off the pitch. That's putting himself in the fire line in a big way. So Man City were decent. Champions League draw.
Yeah, tough one for Man City. Real Madrid
Yeah.
Probably the standout tie of the round, though probably the best tie of the round will be Atletico Madrid against Liverpool.
I haven't seen much La Liga this year given the new TV situation, but Atletico rebuilding somewhat, and they haven't had brilliant form domestically.
Or really in Europe, it's been a bit of a struggle at times. They were absolutely battered, I remember, in the first half of their game by Juventus and managed to somehow drag it out through a couple of corner kicks. João Felix is obviously the talent and the new wonder kid, but they don't seem quite as strong at the back as they were. Diego Godin's obviously not there, so there's a gaping hole. All we seem to read about Atletico Madrid is Kieran Trippier and his performances. It definitely doesn't feel like as tough a task going there for Liverpool as it would have been a couple of years ago. And likewise, Manchester City, Real Madrid, they're very much in contention without feeling like they're anywhere near the side of 4 or 5 years ago. Midfield, every time I watched them and seen a good bit of them in the Champions League, like Modric has just dropped off ever so slightly. He still gets it ticking over, but maybe again it's that Ronaldo's not there and we all just don't fully appreciate how everything clicked. But Benzema's having one of the best seasons of his career. He's scoring almost a goal a game at this rate. But they're not the power they were either. And you really do look at it and think, like, Liverpool and Manchester City are a good step ahead of pretty much everybody else.
It feels that way. Chelsea have Bayern Munich. Bayern are 5th in the Bundesliga, and their Inter manager may be still in place come February, may not. And then Spurs have Leipzig, which is a great draw for them.
Yeah, it's a brilliant draw. I did Leipzig a few times during the group stage, and they're sort of the hipster choice. And Timo Werner does score a goal a game in the Bundesliga, but he's really struggled in the Champions League. And there's no huge quality outside of him. Emil Forsberg, the Swedish player, is sort of their other main threat. It's the sort of game you would expect Mourinho to absolutely relish. Borussia Dortmund, Paris Saint-Germain should be a decent game as well. But Paris Saint-Germain in midfield, since they brought in Icardi during the summer from Inter Milan, he's just been outstanding. Neymar's only back. They've rarely had Icardi, Mbappe, Neymar on the pitch at the same time. But there's just a total lack of quality in midfield.
That's all in the future, Nathan. The time is now, and now belongs to big Duncan Ferguson.
Oof.
Sure.
See, we're such hypocrites.
Go on.
Like, spend 6 months going, no, United, they fell for the emotion of it. Going with Solskjaer.
This is going to go if Ozil keeps tweeting, if others start tweeting. What the Premier League response is going to be is the question. Arsenal's response is going to be, we're going to put our... Moise did storm off, but if he's not at the pitch of the game, then you are entitled to take him off. The mistake is putting him on in the first place. You should have a reasonable grip on where every player is and what's going to suit them in a game.
Well, also, you would think for a player like him who's clearly not starting, that you're working during the week on how he can make an impact and countering that issue of trying to get to the pace of the game, because he just looked light and he's not. I watched him that night against the Irish under-21s when he got sent off for the clash with Troy Parrott. He looked twice the size of the Irish 21s and he just pushed him off the ball every time he got it, like a big, strong player. And you watched him yesterday and you're thinking, hey, who is this guy? Just didn't seem ready for any sort of physical contact. And every time the ball went near him, United players who... there's questions about at times themselves. It was just way too easy.
Yeah.
So you would wonder how they haven't got into his head. When you come on for 15 minutes, this is what you got to do. Got to get yourself around. Got to get a few big shoulders in, make an impact, unsettle them a little bit, and maybe you won't get your goal, but you'll do what we need you to do. Whereas he just looked totally unprepared.
Yeah, it was very interesting. His father a couple of months ago said it's a massive mistake him going to England. Said we've made a terrible mistake here. We need to get him back to Italy as soon as possible. He's still just a boy. I don't think watching his 19-year-old son hauled off and ignored by the manager and going straight down the tunnel. Yeah, I would think January might be imminent for a return.
Part of the problem for him was he was brought in probably to be the main striker, in that Dominic Calvert-Lewin's there. Again, a good player, strong physically, never going to score 20 goals a season though. That they sort of thought, because of what Juventus were doing financially, they might have just stolen this wonder kid away from them and he'd slot straight into the team and just never looked at it.
Yeah. Well, that was Manchester United yesterday. Gary Breen was on with you at the Emirates. We're going to hear from him just bemoaning how broken the Arsenal dressing room is. And Brian Kerr was at Old Trafford as well, so thoughts from him in conversation with Stephen Doyle. In the meantime, Nathan Murphy, thanks very much.
Sure, Joe.
There you are. That was Nathan Murphy speaking to us earlier on. In the meantime, a few bits to let you know about, including events between Crystal Palace and Brighton, 79 minutes on the clock. We mentioned that Brighton had gone 1-0 up in this game, and just in the last 4 or 5 minutes, Wilfried Zaha has scored an incredible goal. Just brilliant stuff. Inside the Brighton area, he was on the left-hand side of the penalty box. Lots of bodies around. Brighton, plenty of men back. And he chopped the ball onto his left foot. He had really no angle on goal. He was a little bit wide. The only thing he could do was blast the ball high into the near post, and he managed to do that, and the keeper had no chance to react. Just a brilliant goal. So Wilfried Zaha probably won't be at Crystal Palace much longer because he is of a different quality. So it's 1-1. Crystal Palace 1, Brighton 1, 79 minutes on the clock. As mentioned, Gary Breen up next.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey. Last January, we started a movement.
I thought, it's really great to have a specific goal, 100 days.
I do about a 30-minute walk a day.
It's just, getting away from everything.
Certainly it's great for the mental health.
And this January 1st, 100 Days of Walking is back. Walk away the December guilt and join the movement as we take to the streets, the beaches, the hills and the forests to walk every day for 100 days. Doesn't matter if it's a mile or a marathon, put January 1st in the diary and let's get walking.
100 Days of Walking on Lunchtime Live.
Thanks to John West. Natural protein made easy.
On News Talk.
Spoil your guests this festive season with our new Inspired by Centra savoury party food range. Choose from our award-winning goat's cheese bruschetta, luxury mini pizzas, succulent pigs in blankets and roasted red pepper vol au vents. Mix and match any two for €7 until January 1st. Centra. Live every day.
Share the joy this Christmas with Harvey Norman. We have all the gifts they'll really love, like the Dyson Supersonic hairdryer with fast drying and protection against extreme heat damage. Get the Dyson Supersonic Gift Edition with free stand for just €399, or enjoy all your favourite Christmas movies on the LG 50-inch 4K Smart TV. Now just €439, saving you €190. For more gift ideas, visit us in store or online. Share the joy this Christmas with Harvey Norman.
Have a great evening with itsforwomen.ie. Don't live your life on hold. Get a quote now at itsforwomen.ie and see why we're trusted by over 130,000 women in Ireland.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
Now then, you're very welcome back. So, Arsenal, Mikel Arteta was back home in Manchester late last night. Various members of the Arsenal hierarchy were seen leaving his house at about 1:20 in the morning or so, according to The Sun. There are photos, and he has now informed Manchester City he has been speaking to Arsenal. So that appointment is imminent or may have just happened. So Mikel Arteta and Arsenal seem like they're going to be spending some time together. Yesterday, we had Gary Breen at the Emirates. It was a desperately poor Arsenal performance. Mikel Arteta was watching alongside Pep Guardiola, and Gary Breen was in co-commentary for us, and we discussed the various ills of the Arsenal dressing room, which predate Emery and obviously will predate Mikel Arteta, and Gary Breen was very good in all this. So just to give you a sense of what he was saying about Arsenal and their problems and where they are and where they're going to go, have a listen to this. I first asked him here just at the end of the game, did he think that Arsenal improved in any way in the second half, or was it just a case of City 3-0 up at half-time going into cruise control?
City just played within themselves, managed the game well enough, bearing in mind that they're going into the winter period, so they have to protect themselves as such. But no, I think that would be over-egging it a little bit to say that Arsenal were better in the second half. They were exactly what we saw in the first. It's just that City didn't put them to the sword, didn't feel that they had to.
Interesting at full time was looking at Freddie Ljungberg, who wasn't all that active. I think you mentioned that as well.
I know.
Smiling with Guardiola, and in some respects there's something commendable and mature about having that kind of perspective, but you feel like what Arsenal need are a few people lacking in perspective, a few men possessed who are absolutely sick with that result. And Freddie Ljungberg, it's not an attack on him at all, and he had a long time to get used to the fact, I presume, that this result was going to go Man City's way, but you sort of want him to give a brief handshake with Guardiola and down the tunnel to tell that team what he thinks of their performances, and there's just not that culture in this squad.
No, there doesn't seem to be that culture at all at the whole club, and that's the problem. I was just discussing it with Nathan there in terms of, if you look up the goal that Pukki scores against Arsenal when he breaks for Norwich, that first goal, There's 5 defenders, maybe 6 defenders in and around them. He scores the goal. The camera then pans to Lundberg on the bench next to Mertesacker and another coach. And they're sitting back, looking at the tablet, reviewing the goal. No one says a word. I've just said to Nathan, it was like they were in the cinema watching a film. And it was incredible. No reaction, no debate amongst them. No reaction of Lundberg to get up and castrate his players or to demand why they weren't. And so passive. And that passive nature, because he's a lovely guy by all accounts, it's a reflection of his team. They're just so passive. And everyone will say, well, listen, he's only just come in. I still argue, listen, it's not all down to him. Of course it's not. And you need time to fix things. But you've got to be culpable in that you were part of Emery's coaching staff. So I don't understand it. Normally when an assistant gets the job, it's when the manager moves on, having been successful, in a way that they're saying Arteta potentially will do if Guardiola has another sabbatical and leaves City. But what were you hoping really to achieve in terms of getting a new voice? Because it's not a new voice. You're not going to get that bounce. And again, it just seems that the priority is just, can we get in an Arsenal man who's a brilliant footballer, which he was, an exceptional footballer, and will live long in the memory of these Arsenal supporters. But again, I keep saying it, I'm sick of saying it. It's a different remit.
Because if you think of coaching, I presume you would have experienced this. Really good coaching is not just one big team talk. It's 1,000 small moments, like the concession of that goal you're talking about.
Yeah.
Someone's body position is off. Something could have been fixed.
It's a difficult one. I just feel that there's too many players now who lack an understanding in terms of how you can stop the opposition. I mean, we commented on it in terms of at the beginning of the game. For those goals that City scored, Arsenal had a back four, good distances between their midfield 4, and then Ozil at 10, Aubameyang at the point. So if you took a picture of them, I'd be saying, yep, that's exactly where they've got to stand. But the problem is, as soon as City move the ball and you've got to make decisions and adjust your body and make a decision whether you go out, engage, whether you drop your body shape, all that, they can't do it. And that's what's incredible, because this is Arsenal. I keep banging the drum. You're talking about the best defenders. You know, if you're picking a Premier League top defence, Arsenal's iconic one will be up there. Talking about top midfielders, Vieira, Petit will be up there, Gilberto Silva will be up there, and that's not even mentioning the likes of Henry and Bergkamp and them type of guys. So listen, they have fallen way below that. And the reality is now is that although these players are good individually, if you were to put them in a mid-table Premier League team, I'm not convinced they keep their place week in, week out.
I mean, it is amazing. They're 9th, 22 points after 17 games. And bar Sheffield United, who may struggle to sustain this kind of form, Wolves can certainly keep things going. Puts Arsenal at about 8th. So they are now a mid-ranking team, really. And
yeah, but that's a reality, Joe. And that's what they need to do. I think to move forward, I think there needs to be a reality check to say, listen, stop banging the drum about we're this and we're that. Yeah, great history. But how many top clubs have had great history? It's about what you're doing on the pitch, and they're so below that, it's frightening. It really is. And I take no pleasure in saying it. I genuinely don't. I really don't, because I'm desperate to see it. And initially, when they had their issues, and I thought when Emery came on, when Emery first come to the club, I thought, yeah, brilliant. He's a manager who's going to introduce a bit of accountability in that. If you don't perform, you're not going to play. We've seen how he done that. But slowly but surely, all that he tried to achieve engulfed him. And he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know whether to stick or twist. He was trying to play out from the back one week. The next week it was 5 at the back. Then it was 4. This one was coming in. That one was coming in. And this is a manager who had a successful record. Yes, I know that the Premier League, and I always emphasise this, I think the Premier League asks questions of you no other league does, in terms of you've got a competitive, tough game every single week. There's no gimme as such. And I just don't think that this Arsenal squad and the hierarchy, they're lacking leadership there. We don't know who's making the decisions. We're talking about the fact that they had 5 captains, a group of 5 captains. I said to you before, if you have to have 5 captains, that means you ain't got one.
Do you know the interesting thing about the board? So that was a criticism you regularly made, and it's undoubtedly a fair one. The interesting thing, though, when it comes to money, they have spent money. If you look at the lowest wage bill in the Premier League, that's Sheffield United on 13 million. The wage bill being traditionally the key indicator where you'll finish. Now, there are other underachievers. United are number 1 wage bill, and look where they are. But Arsenal, 101 million compared to Sheffield United's 13 million. They're the 4th highest wage bill in the league. They went and got Emery, on paper a decent appointment. So I know money and spending money doesn't guarantee good decisions, but the board are trying to spend. Remember a couple of years ago under Wenger around the stadium time, they weren't spending money. They've actually started spending money a little bit of late, certainly to be doing better than they're doing. and they're just not making the right decisions with that money.
Well, exactly, and this is my point. Who's making the decisions? You know, who's part of? I couldn't tell you. I genuinely couldn't tell you, because it seems to change every month. There's always initially a dude comes in and he has played underneath Emery, so you're thinking, okay, they're building something. He wanted to get that chap from Roma, I can't think of his name, as someone who'd worked. That's it. He'd worked with Emery at Valencia and in Spain before. They couldn't get him in, so you're thinking, okay, now where are you going? But I keep emphasising, so much changes. Mislintat comes in, and a great... When they initially brought him in, Casillas, I thought, oh, wow, that's a brilliant signing, bearing in mind all those brilliant players. And his nickname was Diamond Eye in terms of all those brilliant players he unearthed. So I thought, that's good, bearing in mind that Arsenal don't have the financial muscle. I know you're talking about the money they spend, but they don't have the financial muscle to compete with the likes of City. So I'm thinking, okay, develop your own players. It's a great place to come and play football, so people will want to come to the Premier League. They want to come to London. You can say it's a nonsense, but that's what they want to do. They want to live in London. So they have got all those things going in their favour. But then suddenly Mislintat goes because he's effectively not given a job that he was told. They had Maurice Volz, who was their German scout for 4 years as well. He leaves the club. Steve Bold gets reassigned to another job. It's always changing all the time. And then when you're hearing about Kroenke and his son coming in and saying, listen, Arsenal, we've made top-class signings. They're not top-class signings. And you can talk about £100 million spent on Pepe and Salibas, the young centre-half from St Etienne. They loan him straight back. And I don't even think he's getting into their team at the moment. So you're thinking £30 million spent on what is potentially going to do it. And Pepe, it wasn't... We need to clarify this. They have not paid £70 million up front. They've paid it in instalments, and that's why they got the deal done. But you're looking at him and you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what he adds.
No. Diamond Eye. It's not the catchiest
Diamond Eye, that's it.
Not the catchiest nickname. Maybe the German translation's better, but anyway, he's gone. For people listening, Gary, who wouldn't have seen it, and they obviously remember the Xhaka situation, the Ozil substitution, you might just describe how petulant was this, how galling was this, how big a deal is this going to be in the morning?
Oh, well, listen, it will get legs, there's no doubt, and the Arsenal fans will be absolutely seething with it, bearing in mind that it's still so raw what Xhaka done. And they made a decision to take Ozil off, and he's been taken off under Lumbo before, and when he did it in previous games, he started shouting at Mertesacker on the bench. I mean, the lack of strength there as a manager to allow a player to do that to you is beyond me. But then anyway, the substitution's made. He's in around the halfway line. Arsenal, they're out of the game, but nevertheless, they want to make a positive substitution, want to chase it in the last few moments. He ambles off. Suddenly the boos start. He actually started walking slower. It looked like he was moonwalking at one stage. He was going backwards. And then he comes off and he volleys his gloves into the supporters, and you're just thinking, you just don't help yourself. And when you're talking about wage bills and stuff, that gives it a distorted one, doesn't it? That one of your players is getting 350 grand a week here, where he would not get that at any other club in the world.
Yeah, there's your highest earner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, you would think, even if you're Ozil, in a cynical way, just in a self-serving cynical way, you know what's happened to Xhaka a couple of months ago.
But on that, Joe, on that with Xhaka, and people think that they've just turned on the player, Arsenal were chasing the game. They needed to make a positive substitution, and he walked off Xhaka, and he got booed for it. Now, everyone says, and I understand that in terms of what he said, that he's found it difficult, that the horrible messages that his family have been getting, which is abhorrent. It really is. And that should have criminal proceedings if anyone's threatened his family. But take that aside, he has never, ever apologised for what he did that day in terms of swearing and telling the supporters to do one. He's just literally said an explanation as to why he did that. He feels no responsibility in terms of how he reacted, and nor did Ozil there. And this is the problem, is that they're the most self-rewarding group of players I think I've ever seen. I genuinely mean that, and they're the weakest group I've ever seen. You think about selfies when they beat Leicester, that time here, that late Danny Welbeck winner to beat them 2-1 in the season that Leicester won the league. And they thought they'd won the league. Selfies in the changing room, celebrating, jumping around, literally had the champagne out. Ended up finished 10 points behind Leicester. And this is the problem you have, is that there's a culture at Arsenal that's rotten. It is. And that's not to say they're not great guys and they're not good footballers, because they are. But as a collective, it's rotten. It really is.
There you are, Gary Breen. It's all pretty damning. And Mikel Arteta, when he gets his feet under the table, has a massive job on his hands. Short break. Brian Kerr is coming up next.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
This is an important notice from Revenue to PAYE taxpayers. Since January last, your employer or pension provider sends Revenue details of your pay, tax and other statutory deductions each time you get paid. This means your employer or pension provider won't be issuing a Form P60 at the end of the year. Instead, Revenue will provide you with an employment details summary, which replaces the P60. This summary will be available in My Account from January next. More information is included with the Tax Credit Certificate for 2020, which Revenue is currently sending to all employees and pension recipients.
All you need this Christmas is carry out off licence. Make your money go further with our incredible deals on box beers, multi-pack cans and wines from all over the world. Plus our amazing Eastern European selection, such as the fantastic Perla beer range, now in stock. Fill your cupboard for less this festive season. Carry out off licence. Simply better wines and beers. Simply better value. Enjoy alcohol responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
Now, welcome back. So we had Brian Kerr on yesterday. He was in very good form. Enjoyed the Manchester United-Everton game. He's done a lot of United games for us lately, Brian Kerr. So Everton went to Old Trafford, got a 1-1 draw. Duncan Ferguson obviously doing his thing. We've talked about all that with Damon Delaney on the show this evening. Brian Kerr afterwards caught up with Stephen Doyle to give his take on what he saw at Old Trafford from both sides. Everton won, Manchester United won.
Stephen Doyle here with Brian Kerr after a pretty exciting game here at Old Trafford. Brian, Manchester United won, Everton won. I think you thought it was a pretty fair result in the end.
I thought it was a fair result, but I thought it was a very good game. It was, mostly all out attack by both teams. Certainly United's approach was along those lines. They played with the same vibrancy and dash that we've seen in the recent matches. Obviously the win over Spurs and Manchester City, they were very good in both games. We pair of us saw them at Sheffield United, and it was only sporadic that we saw that type of play, that spell in the second half when they got 3 goals and 11-minute spell to get into a lead. But today I thought United were very good at times. Unfortunate to lose the goal, which gave Everton something to hang on to, and they nearly did. And then when they conceded the equaliser, they had to go to try and win the match themselves. But a good match, and I think both managers will, to use the phrase that's most common now with managers, take positives from the game. I think both managers will take lots of positives from that game.
Well, one man that's oozing positivity at the moment is Mason Greenwood. I know you're a big fan of his, and he is getting crucial goals now for Manchester United. When you look at the likes of Martial and possibly Jesse Lingard as well, maybe not playing that well at the moment, how long before he starts pushing for a starting place in this United team? Or is 18 years of age, is he still a bit too young?
I don't see him being a regular ahead. I mean, I feel that the front line, Daniel James, Rashford and Martial, is actually playing very well at the moment. I mean, I think Lingard has been a little bit less so. He's not been a regular. He's not been getting his game. He's had his problems this season. But in recent matches, when he came on against Sheffield United, he had a big impact on the match. Played well here, I thought, against Villa too. And then he made good contribution last week at Manchester City and in the Spurs game. So I think Lingard's been doing all right. But will I see Greenwood start? I see him much like Rashford when he came in as a young lad. He got the physical strength to play as the main man centre forward as he would have as a youth player. Forced to play wide, similar to Rashford and Martial when they came in, when Lukaku was here. Alexis Sanchez was here. They're squeezed out a bit more. Now this year, Lukaku and Sanchez are gone, so Martial and Rashford are in the team. Martial playing in his position, probably his best position. I have a feeling he might like playing with somebody else up front, but I don't see Greenwood being, taking any of those players' places in the immediate term. But there'll always be opportunities because of fitness issues, there may be even suspensions, injuries, all sorts of things. So he's a very good squad player, and having an impact coming on in big matches, not just the Europa League, where United have been much better than Astana, Partizan and AZ in general, although they lost to Astana and they lost away to, but in general they've been better than those teams, whereas the Premier League the matches are much more even. He's made an impact. He scored a couple of goals. When you say I like him, I like his mentality and his technical ability to be able to go in at 18 years of age into a Premier League, in the heat of battle, away to Sheffield United, Bramall Lane, raucous Bramall Lane that day, get a goal. And then come on today when the rest were struggling to find a way to score, and he scored, and it wasn't an easy chance.
Yeah, it was a great finish. Just on United, Victor Lindelof, there was a quote from him a couple of weeks ago saying that their problem was that they were really switched on for the big games against the likes of, say, Man City last week, Tottenham the week before, but it was against the weaker sides in the division that they really just weren't being switched on enough and they weren't focused enough on those games. You know, is this United season, are they just going to be, you know, stuttering from one good result to another kind of average result and just hovering around that 7th, 8th position, or maybe up to 6th, 5th?
Well, we don't
not getting
know.
Into the top
we
four.
don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely an improvement in recent weeks. The last match they've lost was away to Bournemouth when they played quite poorly, but they were after been on a fair run before that, and since then the results have been good. I mean, I was here when they beat Brighton 3-1 and they played very well indeed. Then we had the 2 draws with Sheffield United and Aston Villa, which were frustrating for them, given both of those were teams that come up from the Championship last year. But Sheffield United are proving their mettle week in, week out, and Villa looked a half-decent side here, I have to say, in that game. Since then, beating Spurs, beating Manchester City, and fair enough draw today. I mean, Everton didn't come here to lie down. They've had a little bit of a surge now with Duncan Ferguson in at the moment, coming off a good result. So that's fair. What's that? Three wins and 3 draws from the last 6 games, which is not bad. It's 12 points from 8 in, and while they're combining the Europa League matches. But you know, the Christmas matches will tell a tale. You've got 4 games tight together, league games, busy schedule, and they've not got the most difficult programme over that time. So, you know, I think there's a bit more consistency about it. If you look at the team, it's become more stable looking. The team today was the same team as last week. You look at centre halves, that's the partnership that's playing regularly. You look at the midfield, and it's the same partnership. Fred and McTominay have settled into. Still no Pogba available to them. Few other players out injured, but some of them are probably available. Jones is probably available, and he won't get into the team after his performance against Sheffield United, the likes of Rojo. But he's definitely gone towards the younger group. It appears that's what the club want. That's what the policy is, a younger profile. They're the youngest team in the league on a regular basis. Average age just around the 25 years mark. They had the youngest team that ever played in the Premier League against Brighton a few weeks ago. So, you know, that's where the action is for them, and he is taking them along that road that we talked about. The pressure now that Pochettino was available after the Sheffield United game, and we talked about it again after the Aston Villa game, but that's quieting down a little bit now after the last week. But certainly the style of football today, there's nobody left this ground saying, we need to get back to the old style and the Fergie style and all that. People who were here today were entertained. They saw a youthful team playing with verve and vim and attacking quality and intent. That's what I saw, and they took risks in chasing the equaliser and in chasing the winner.
Just to ask you quickly before I ask you about Seamus Coleman, if they were going to sign anybody in January, what area of the pitch? Like, I'm kind of looking at that United team, possibly a central midfield. They could do signing somebody in there maybe.
Well, if Pogba goes, I mean, there was talk about Pogba going before, you know, that he wanted to go.
Well, that's an offer because he's got this ankle injury, but he's been playing basketball down in America.
Well, I don't
What's
know
going on?
Well, it does seem odd that he hasn't been around and that they're allowing him to get treatment far, far away. I would have thought that Manchester United would have a very strong team of physios and medical people here that could treat, that have seen it all before. It seems very strange that they would allow one of the most
valuable assets,
a very phrase, to float about and do his own thing many miles from Manchester. That seems odd, but I think we will see. We have to presume we will see him back in the United team before the end of this season, and then evaluate whether they need another midfield players. I think Fred has settled down into a much more effective player than what we saw in the early part of this season and last season. And McTominay has become such a key man. Did they need another player in there? Of course they would need another player that would add to that. But at the moment, I think the pair of them are doing quite well. And if they had Pogba, would give them another option. He lacks consistency, but maybe within this team, I mean, it appears they've got back some of the values that most people thought were very important to Manchester United, and Pogba doesn't always fit with that, I would say. When you be talking about a lack of bling and humility and a team player and low key and professionalism and get on with it. He doesn't really sit in with those. He's exuberant and he's extravagant and he's got different coloured hair and he's very much bling and extrovert. But with those guys, if they can deliver for you in the match and do their stuff and they're exceptional and they produce and they're match winners, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to come back. He owes them one now because he's done nothing for months. He hasn't played. You want to come back here and do your stuff and get on with it.
Brian, I'm going to reveal some news to you because I've just been talking to Seamus Coleman, the Irish captain, down in the tunnel there, and on the day of his 300th Everton appearance, which really is a fantastic record, he told us that he actually played with that rib injury that he's been out with for the last few weeks, called upon obviously because the fact that Sidibe was down with an illness. That kind of epitomises the kind of player that Seamus Coleman has been over those 300 appearances for Everton, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's no surprise really to hear that. I mean, I don't, he's obviously had something that's kept him out of the group for the last few weeks. He wasn't on the bench. I mean, I think he had lost his place based on performances. He hadn't been playing that well. He was part of the defence that was getting ripped apart, and the manager was sacked as a result. But fair play to him getting out and play today. Everton supporters love him. He's highly respected in the club. He's highly respected in Ireland. He's a sensational lad.
Is he one of the best Irish players we've seen in the Premier League? Where would he rank, do you think, in that maybe top 5, top 10?
Take me a bit of time to assess that. He's playing in an era in the Premier League where we have had very few other Irish players playing in the Premier League. That's the truth of it. This year's been a bit different since Sheffield United come up, and we had 3 players, we had 4 if you include Callum Robinson, who are nearly regulars in the Sheffield United team. And outside that, those players and the Burnley players, the 3 at Burnley who have been, Kevin Long, he's not playing regular. Jeff Hendrick is playing regular. Brady has not been playing right. Yeah. We had Stephen Ward when he was there, but they've been our Premier League players for the last 6-7 years. We haven't had anyone else who's been playing on a regular basis. So Seamus has probably been the best in that era. But over the whole Premier League era, I'd have to evaluate that because we've had a lot of decent players over that time in the Premier League. It's just that in recent times we haven't had Irish players good enough to get consistent places in near the upper echelons of the Premier League.
He did say that Duncan Ferguson gave a very inspirational speech to the players before they kicked off the game today. Look, would there be any harm in just letting him take the tiller for the next few games, and maybe Everton, Mashiri and Kenwright up in the director's box, maybe just to take their time and to assess what the club needs? I don't know if Ancelotti's the right man. Is he really for Everton at this moment in time?
Well, there's no one in Everton telling us they're dealing with they're talking to Ancelotti anyway, so we don't know if that's the case. Duncan Ferguson won you know, in the space of a very short time, they've got two very good results where they're coming off the back of what's been a poor season. They had them down near the bottom three, and you know, coming off three defeats in a row. Norwich, Leicester, hiding off Liverpool in the derby match. Now they've got 4 points, which brings a little bit of hope and stability. But we've seen all this before with Everton. They've had more managers in the last few years than most clubs around, chopping and changing and bringing in new managers halfway through the season to rescue a situation where they thought they were going to have a good season. I wouldn't be surprised, given that the two performances and the two results, if they left Ferguson there for a while longer, to see how it pans out, while they identify what they consider to be the right man. They haven't been very good at picking managers.
Well, it seems that Moshiri seems to, because he's got such a control of the club now, with regards to his shares and that kind of thing. He's the main shareholder there now. He seems to want control of the decision, which he did with Marco Silva, and you know, maybe that wasn't the right decision. Well, it wasn't the right decision, as we found out.
You know, they had Sam Allardyce, and Sam got them results and got them up to a very respectable finish last year. Was it 10th or 8th last year, or 2 years ago? And they weren't happy with that, you know. And they identified Ronald Koeman before that, and it didn't work out with him either. So they've had a bit of a succession of people that it hasn't worked out with either. So I don't think they've been very good at picking what they really, really want.
Yeah.
You know, which is they seem to want someone that understands the history of Everton and the type of game that Everton fans like, and who can get them results playing that way. So, you know, I don't know what way they're going, but for the time being, they've got themselves out of the mire a little bit by the two results, and let's see how it goes over the 4 games. It's been difficult for them because so many players out injured, when you look at the team today, and Sidibe I think would have started, I think would agree, Sigurdsson and Sneijder would have played in the middle of the field had they been fit and well. Theo Walcott would probably have started as well, but then you're looking at other ones outside of that group. Gamian, I think the lad they signed expensively pre-season, he's hardly played at all. You know, there's a lot of players there. Gomez, who was their best midfield player, he's out of the picture. You know what I mean? He's just back from an injury as well. And they've had a lot of problems. So fair play to them getting a result with the team they had out today with the two young lads in the middle of the field, Holgate and Davies, who did very well, I thought.
Thanks, Brian.